welcome to the Think Well, where we attempt to apply sound reasoning to a range of topics that don't adhere to any particular genre, that are socially pertinent, that can provide you with the tools to better help you navigate your way through society. And today, it is something that I want to talk about that happened to me that I believe is pertinent. So I'm walking with my son. My son is age 6. My son, at this time of recording, goes to one of the top schools in the country. And he's wearing his uniform. I'm dressed quite smartly. We're making our way down through a fashionable street in the city on our way to school. I believe that everything happens for a reason and that everything is mathematically balanced to perfection, to the smallest detail. And so as we're walking, me and my son are playing what we call the guessing game. And the guessing game is just simply that. There's no structure. It's just a fun thing where we can think up anything in our minds that have to do with, could be anything, film, a colour, food, anything that we can think of that one another is aware of, and we can think of that thing and we give some clues to help the other person guess that thing. And we're walking down the street playing this game. And as we're walking down, at that moment in time, I'm thinking up a colour. So in front of me, the traffic lights have just turned green nearby. There are trees. We're in a leafy part of the street, quite simply. And as we're walking down, as fate would have it, there's a couple. It's school drop-off hours. It's rush hour traffic. So you've got a couple walking towards us. We're walking that way. And as we're just coming in alignment with them, as it would be, when I'm saying the colour, my son says, leaves. Leaves. And at that moment, the couple that are aligned with us laugh. They sneer, they chuckle. And I weighed it up and I thought, were they just laughing? But it could have been something just to do with them or whatever. But the more I thought about it, and the way that they laughed, and the fact that it was right there in the type of laughter, wasn't like a wholesome laughter or whatever. The whole characteristics of the laughter wasn't wholesome. It wasn't right. And the exact timing as I spoke, as my son spoke. Anyway, that's that. So for me, it was something that filled me with rage at the time because I felt it was extremely disrespectful and I thought that it was abhorrent. Now, it's not abhorrent in terms of the crimes that exist. I'm not calling them murderers or rapists. They've not assaulted my son or done my son harm in a physical way. And people might just see it as something that is, we have the right to do so. But I think from a moral point of view, from my moral perspective, it was abhorrent. And of course, I'm probably biased as the father of a protective father over his son. But for me, the laughter was indicative of several things. For me, I think it was indicative of their insecurity. The fact that they are insecure about the fact that I'm well dressed for work. I'm in my suit. My son is in the uniform of the school that he goes to. They would be no strangers to the uniform or the part of or the school that he's going to in terms of our trajectory at that moment in time. And I think it was insecurity. And I think that comes down to what I would call the crimogenic characteristics of society in terms of the fact that we adhere to a ruling class empiricism. That is the dominant worldview. And it has structured it in a way where one can feel that they are better than somebody else or doing better, or that they have more humanity because of the job that they have, or the racial characteristics that they have, or the class that they belong to in society. And I think that comes down to the ruling class structure of what is intellect, what is decency, what is civilization, okay? These are the things that have been coded in our society, and they have been coded through the discursive repetition of text, of media, of word of mouth, of communication amongst human beings. And that is what has structured and coded society in the way that we perceive certain things, how we see certain clothing, how we see certain racial characteristics, how we see certain modes of reasoning. And so my son's reasoning, because it didn't strictly adhere to what would have been a more coherent answer in terms of the colour green, daddy. Sharp, crisp and immediate response is what would have been warranted there. I think to reflect the uniform that he was wearing. And I think that that gave this couple the breath of fresh air that they so desperately needed to free them from their insecurity, that they could point to something, oh, it's not that bad. He's going to St. Peter's, this guy's probably in a good job or whatever, but his son's an imbecile, or he's not reasoning properly. The school's not that great then, is it? Or he's not doing that well at the school. That very negative baseline looking for negativity. And that's where I say crimogenic, because it becomes negative. We are now involved in negative forces that are not civilized at all. They adhere to the civilization of Eurocentric norms and values. But for me, this is not civilized on a humane, humanitarian and moral basis. Because what's going on there is you're looking for negativity to make yourself feel better in a society that honours and shames its citizens based on class, race, gender, and other characteristics that are there. And so we have this honouring and shaming structure that structures what we call civilization in the Western world within this Eurocentric situation. And of course, Britain has its own idiosyncrasies that are specific to its particular social stratification. And class is really very much a quintessentially British phenomenon. Although, of course, it's part of the world today, but it's a very British thing, class. And so I think that was what was going on. And I think it was abhorrent, because what's gone on is that in that moment, this couple have become what I would call, or they feel that they are an objective force, that they know everything that there is to know, that they are Jesus Christ Almighty, that they are the objective structure, that they are the objective consciousness that structures the universe. They are the creator. They know all things. And that's the problem with the Eurocentric situation, that it assumes that it is the only valid mode of reason on planet Earth, that it knows everything. That is, it knows the heavens and the earth. It knows the universe inside out. It knows everything that there is to know about it. And that is what ideology claims to know. It claims to have an authority on God, on all of the existential questions that exist in the universe. And that's ideology. And that's what goes beyond opinion, simple opinion. And it's very simplistic that my son, in reasoning in that way, his life is forfeit. He's doomed to be a failure, or we're better than you. And these are negative forces where people try to get one over on one another because they believe that that the possibility exists that they can be better than somebody else, or be better, and therefore have honour assigned to them as opposed to shame. And for me, that is a very negative, fragile society. Very fragile, volatile, crimogenic. Because it is the source of insecurities, of mental fragility. There is no basis there for wholesomeness and to be having a sound psychological profile. And it opens itself up to crimogenic negative forces. Because if I was to adhere to that force, I would feel that I would need to honour my son by dishonouring them or shaming them. And so it goes. And there are laws to prohibit violence or whatever. But the top psychiatrist, one of the top psychiatrists in the world, James Gilligan, who is a psychiatrist who's worked in US prisons and has worked with the mentally unwell in prisons, psychopaths and so on and so forth, has argued that when we are shamed, when we are brought, when we are abused to a particular level, in the same way that when we arrive at the speed of light in Newtonian physics, the physical structure of reality no longer stands at the speed of light. The laws governing physics alter at the speed of light. So it is with humanity, Gilligan argues. When we approach a level, the equivalent of the speed of light, in terms of being sufficiently shamed, the laws that we apply to humanity, the assumptions, the ideals of humanity that we hold dear no longer hold when one is sufficiently shamed as a psychological entity. And that one as a psychological entity, in order to protect one's psychological integrity and to preserve the human spirit, which I would argue is far more important than the physical body, because the human spirit, I would argue, is human headquarters. That is human headquarters. It governs every action that our body is going to make. How we are psychologically, yeah? And so in order to maintain ourselves as a psychological entity, we will forego our physical freedoms. We'll sacrifice our bodies in order to preserve ourselves as psychological entities. And therein lies what Gilligan says is the source of violence. And that is only compounded by the justice system, by the judges, who again feel that they know everything and want to demonize criminals. Every criminal is a monster. We can't look at it in that way all the time, because what about the therapeutic processes that should be there to disentangle the process of abuse, psychological abuse and shaming that has taken part in that person's life? How can we restore humanity to that individual so that they can reach psychological equilibrium and be brought back to the realms of normality? How has the brain become sick? To heap more shame and punishment, that is to inflict more pain on an already traumatized psyche, seems like folly to me. Okay? Seems like folly to me, to inflict more harm, more pain through your punishment on an already traumatized psyche that's already had sufficient punishment and shame administered through social processes. Okay? Now we need to look at the therapeutic, because society is sick. And to laugh at my son in that way, to sneer, to get comfort, to feel good about the fact that you are looking down on a child and that you feel that their life is forfeit because they've not articulated intellect in the way that you are judging it, so that you can feel better about going to work, that you can feel better at yourself. It's neither good for you, nor for me, nor for my son. That is the base of a sick society that goes round and round, and the shame keeps on heaping up and it keeps on piling up on society until, there's nowhere more for it to go, for that negative energy to go, and it either implodes, or it implodes and is represented through explosive violence in many ways. Okay? Because people feel shamed. And we need to work through these processes. The ruling classes are the gatekeepers that control society. And so as long as that is there, the shaming and honouring system will remain in place to benefit a few. That's all it's there to do. To keep those who are at the top, and to allow the others to fight among themselves. And that's the crimogenic processes, because everybody's fighting to get to be like those at the top. To be like them. Not to challenge, not to overthrow the hegemonic ruling classes, but to be as much like them and to aspire to them, so that we fight amongst ourselves and create these negative crimogenic forces in our scramble to the top. We're scrambling to be at the top, to be at this mythical Mount Olympus of perfection. This mythical Mount Olympus of perfection. Perfection is yourself. As God created you, for the purpose that God created you for. To reason in the way that God created you to reason. That is the basis of diverse planetary reason. And it is wholesome. And it is good. Okay? Just because I'm not wearing designer labels in a particular way doesn't mean I'm lesser. Just because I look a particular way or I reason in a particular way doesn't make me lesser. Okay? Doesn't. And that's inner peace. Knowing that you are enough. Getting your psychological processes right. Why do I feel inferior? Okay? What makes me jealous? What is it? What makes me that way? And dealing with yourself to sort yourself out. And that's what will give you inner peace. But what happened regarding my son made me upset, and I was very angry, and it gave me negative feelings, and it made me want to lash out. Okay? And that is the basis of a crimogenic society. That's what's there. And people that are pushing this evil agenda, because I think it's evil to laugh and to sneer at somebody and to behave that way with a child, is evil. It's evil processes. I'm not saying that this couple were evil absolute, but I'm saying that they were engaged in evil forces that are creating negative energy, and anything could have happened out of that. And it's negative, and it's not always people who wear back. It is actually the people considered normal, everyday 9-to-5 people that think in this negative, uncivilized way, and that fuel evil forces in society. It doesn't have to be the people that have been promoted as evil. The image of evil in tracksuits, melanated skin, people with other skin tones wearing different clothing. Evil comes in different ways. And this 9-to-5 couple walking were engaged in evil forces. Highly uncivilized. Disgraceful, really. Disgraceful people, really, at that moment in time. Awful. And it's not civilized behavior. It's not civilized. And so I point to these abhorrent forces that structure society. That's what I'm pointing towards. Okay, this honoring and shaming dichotomy that structures society at the behest of the ruling classes that govern, that are the gatekeepers of society. The ruling classes, through their power, have assumed a monopoly on humanity and what humanity actually is. Okay, that's the game. That's what's going on here. Okay, and it's created crimogenic forces that filter down into society amongst the middle class and the rest of us that are fighting amongst ourselves to attain this mythological humanity that the ruling classes have a monopoly on, that structure society, okay? That tell you what to wear, how to speak, how to look. We're all coded. My melanated skin is coded so that people read it in a particular way. My clothes are coded. The way I walk is coded. My accent is coded. My haircut is coded. The partner that I have is coded. My son's skin color is coded. Because we've been bombarded with the imagery and what that imagery means in society. We've been bombarded with the imagery of beauty. We've been bombarded with the imagery of intellect. We've been bombarded with the narratives of intellect and everything else. We've been bombarded with that. And that bombardment of imagery has coded every category that exists within society. So that everything is perceived and seen in a particular way. And so it is the ruling class empiricism that structures our perception of society, that has been coded through the bombardment of imagery from the monopoly that the ruling classes have on humanity. Okay? And it's a falsehood. It is ultimately a lie. And so we really need to think about society and how we think and what is real humanity. We need to look through the lies and see what is humanity. Can't just be adhering to it, you know. I've worn, you know, designers and been desperate to have certain designers and worn all of those designer goods, and in the end, it doesn't mean anything. I'm not even a millionaire, far from a millionaire, but I've realized it doesn't mean anything like the popping of champagne and the clothes and the find your own style, look good for you. High street is what I deal with these days. I might mix high street with a designer bit if it's really nice and it suits my character and it looks good. But it's about just doing you, looking good, healthy, finding love in your life, knowing who you are as a human being, finding inner peace. Finding inner peace. Yeah, having material things to a certain extent. Obviously, I want to be in a nice kitchen and feel good and, you know, have facilities that are advantageous and be able to look at TV in a way that engages me on a nice telly and things like that, and be able to rest in a nice house with space. You know, for my mentality, you know, these things are nice. But materialism, just for the sake of it, you know, when Jay-Z and Beyonce are buying 18 karat gold babies' cribs, the baby's not gonna care whether it's lying in a solid gold crib or whether it's lying in a thingy crib. As long as it's comfortable and it's there, it's gonna have no knowledge of it. The gold's not doing anything at all. Okay, there's ridiculous things, you know, somebody talking about washing their hair with champagne or something. That's ridiculous. That makes you sound like an idiot. Yeah, so there's all of this pretense just for the show of it, you know, and I think that really what I'm trying to reason is that society is sick because of this brand of humanity that we're having to feed into, that we're having to honor, you know, in somehow that it means something, particular modes of reasoning. And I look at it from my perspective. I'm very lucky to have been educated to a particular level. Of course, there are people far more educated and far more intelligent than myself, but I'm at a reasonable level, I would say. And it's a blessing. It's a gift in itself to be educated. That is the ultimate way. Because through being educated, you're able to actually uncover the truth of what humanity and what civilization actually is in your own mind. And once you have that, that is probably the most powerful tool that you can have against what's going on in society at the moment in terms of the brand of humanity that creates this honouring and shaming dichotomy that I think is a source of crimogenic negative forces in society that are the root of crime, that are the root of a lot of crime in our society, and that have got a lot of young men in jail through violence because they're trying to honour themselves through violence. Okay? Especially young black men that are in jails because they feel that they reside at the bottom of the social pecking order. Their skin is not enough to be honoured. The way that they are naturally isn't a way to be honoured. The Afrocentric is something that has historically been shamed, and that have been carried on through generations through historically instinctive behaviours that shame Afrocentricity, Afrocentric thought, Afrocentric behaviour, Afrocentric people. And so people seek the power of transformation. They seek the power of transformation to transform their Afrocentric selves into something that is Eurocentric, that feeds into this ruling class, that feed into this ruling class monopoly on humanity. And so a lot of young black men try to attain the power of transformation so that they can have the clothes, they can have the trinkets which designate them as human, as reasonable people, as people who reason in the right way and who are thinking in the right way. Okay? And a lot of these black men carry out violence on other black men to try and get to the top of this pecking order. of humanity that the ruling classes have a monopoly on. This Mount Olympus of Perfection at the top there, with the clothes and the girls and the house and all right, I'm civilized now. I'm being honored. You're preserving your psychological entity there, okay, through being looked at negatively by people in society, because it wears on you. When people look down on you, I've had it, look down on you and discard you and don't want to talk to you. I've had it at my son's school with the ruling classes looking at me and not wanting to deal with me and, talking amongst themselves in their little cliques and looking at me as if I'm, this savage, what's this savage Negro doing here kind of thing, But I'm good. I'm educated. I know the reality. They can't touch me because I'm educated. I know what civilization is. Okay? I'm not bound to this ruling class monopoly of what a human being is or what humanity is. Okay? Because that's a load of crap. It's not reality. The ruling class / Eurocentric monopoly on the humanitarian project is not it. And I can see beyond that. That's the matrix. That's the coded matrix there that's been created, the simulation of reality in ruling class Eurocentric terms. That's the matrix. That's Agent Smith that's governing, that's keeping a keen eye on you. Every eye that looks at you disparagingly to shame you is Agent Smith in the Matrix. Sorry to take it so deep. The agents are everywhere and can be anyone and everyone. Hey. Can be everyone and anyone with that ideology. And they're there to police the Matrix. Agent Smith is knocking about everywhere. That disparaging look. These are the people that govern the ruling class monopoly. They police the ruling class monopoly on humanity. And we've taken it deeper. Okay? Agent Smith, the bout. Okay? That's what's going on here. They police every stare, every disparaging look, every sneer, every giggle, everything. The couple that walked past me and my son were Agent Smith, policing the Matrix, policing the monopoly that the ruling classes have on the humanitarian project. Okay? That's what's going on there. They were policing it with their sniggering and their sneering in this highly uncivilized structure. It's not civilization. It is baseline. It is bottom of the it is the baseline of the human spirit, if you ask me. It lacks morality. Okay? Lacks it. It's crimogenic. But this couple were Agent Smith. That was their role. They're policing the Matrix. And everyone that buys into this monopoly that the ruling classes have is Agent Smith, policing the Matrix, and therefore will never be free of it, will never be free of the simulated reality that is there. It's not real. It's a simulation created to benefit the ruling class elite. That's it. Okay? And they've had as least regard for the impoverished classes as they've had for black people. Okay? It wasn't always about race. Okay? It wasn't always about race. And when you look at the word villain, that's another one. Villain. V-I-L-L-E-I-N. Means people of the land. Means people of the land. Serfs. People that resided under their feudal lords, aka the impoverished, the working classes. There's always been contempt for those below, for the impoverished, because they are the conduit mechanism. They are the people that provide the ruling classes with their position, and that's how they've been perceived, as villains. That's where the term comes from. People of the land. People without ownership, right? Villains that has evolved into villains, evil people that are bad. That is a ruling class terminology that fully expresses the contempt that the ruling classes have for the working class and the impoverished, aka those without ownership. Okay? It gets deeper. Okay? This is serious. The Matrix is real. When people used to ask me that when I was doing my masters, and I used to say the Matrix was real, people would look at me like I was bonkers. I didn't mean it literally. Didn't mean it literally as in an AI construction, though that might well be on the way in terms of us being in 2025. But it certainly doesn't exist already. I didn't mean it in that literal way. I simply meant that there was a simulation of reality created by the ruling classes that has inflicted the rest of society that is incorporated within that simulated reality for the benefit of the ruling class. That has always existed, okay? And that's what's going on with it. And we need to free ourselves from that nonsense. That's what's going on.